now releasing all goblins.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further as you can use the promo code MTGMudsta to get you 5% off anything on the site. You can also use the promo code MTGMudsta for 5% off your orders from Face to Face Games, Canada's largest Magic the Gathering store, with qualified orders getting free shipping Canada-wide. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin Gang. Hey you! If you haven't signed up for the notification for my Kickstarter campaign, you should know it's live now. It features the incredible artwork of Andre Garcia, not to mention has tons of great add-ons, like dice, tokens, and a sweet two-sided coin. If you're interested in picking one up, look for the pinned comment below with the link to the Kickstarter. Hey gang, and welcome back to the second installment of my Precon games. This time, instead of playing the face commanders, we've picked the background ones plus the background. That means Micah is playing Durnan and Passionate Archaeologist, Kevin is playing Baeloth and Clan Crafter, Maximus is playing Zellix and Haunted One, and I'm playing Burakos and Folk Hero. We didn't record our opening hands, but Maximus wins the die roll and starts us off. He draws, playing a tap Temple of Deceit, scrying one, and passing. Mika draws and plays a Cinder Glade. Kevin also has a tap land with a Wandering Fumarole and passes. I also have a man land for turn with a Shambling Vents. Maximus plays an Exotic Orchard and casts Lightning Greaves, passing. Mika's turn has him playing a Castle Embreth and then paying 2 for Nature's Lore, going to find a forest and passing. Kevin draws, plays a mountain, and casts Talisman of Creativity. I have a Swamp for turn and cast Machias the Lunarch, putting 1 into the X. Maximus draws and plays a Tainted Isle, and then casts Zellix. He equips the Lightning Greaves to his commander, and going to combat, goes at Mika for 2 and passes. Mika draws and plays a Forest. He's got enough for Durnan, casting his commander and passing. Kevin draws and plays Propaganda, but has no land for turn and has to pass. I have a Plains for turn and cast a Nighthawk Scavenger, shipping the turn to Maximus. Maximus draws and plays a Swamp. He then casts the Haunted One background, passing turn. Mika draws and plays a Command Tower. Going to combat, he swings Durnan and Maximus for 4. And with his own attack trigger, exiles a Sakur Tribe Elder. Maximus responds by activating Zellix, targeting Mika, and manages to hit a creature off the mill, making a 1/1 Horror. The Horror gets +2/+0 thanks to the Haunted One, or so we think, which we're actually incorrect about, but fix later. He then trades with Durnan, which, as I said, we fix later. And after combat, Mika casts Urabras the Hidden and passes. Kevin draws and plays a Desolate Lighthouse. He then casts a Curse of Verbosity onto Mika and passes. During his end step, I activate Machias, putting a +1/+1 counter onto him. I draw and cast my commander Burakos. Moving to combat, I swing the Nighthawk Scavenger at Mika, dealing 4 and gaining 4. I also draw a card from the curse and pass turn. Maximus draws and plays a Command Tower. He casts Ravenous Chupacabra, which as it enters, destroys Urabrask. He then passes turn. Mika draws and plays a Mountain. He casts his Primeval Bounty, which as we know is very strong in this deck, and passes. Kevin draws and plays a tap Path of Ancestry, paying 4 after that for a Solemn Simulacrum. He goes into his library to grab an island, and passes. I draw and play a Vault of the Archangel. I cast Mirror Entity and go to combat, paying the 2 to Propaganda to swing Burakos at Kevin. Burakos triggers from swinging, making me 4 treasures and dealing 4 to Kevin's face. Kevin chumps with the Solemn, which as it dies, draws him a card. Once that's done, I pass. On my end step, Maximus once more activates Zellix, and after some discussion, we realize that he can't stack the Cursed One trigger, so Mika does get his Durnan back. Maximus has me milling 3 off the ability, and he gets a Horror token and goes to his turn. Maximus draws and plays a Rogue's Passage. He then plays his other commander, Captain Nathrod, which unfortunately because the copy of the deck didn't have the actual one, we have to use the etched foil variety, and he moves the Lightning Greaves onto it. Going to combat, he swings the Captain and the Horror token at Mika, who takes the damage and mills 4. He hits no creatures or artifacts, so in his post-combat main phase, Maximus activates Zellix to mill him for another 3, and he hits a creature this time around and makes a Horror token. Moving to his end step, Maximus then takes Layla with the Captain's trigger and passes. Mika draws and plays Escape to the Wilds. He gets to put 3+1/+1 counters onto Durnan with the Primeval Bounty trigger, and then plays 2 forests from the Exiles, gaining 6. He then casts Passionate Archaeologist, and then Sakura Tribe Elder off of Durnan, making a beast token from the Primeval Bounty, and then goes to combat. He swings Durnan at Maximus, and exiles a Bloodbraid Elf off the trigger. Maximus chumps with the Horror token, and Mika then passes. Kevin draws and plays a Temple of the False God. He then casts Clancrafter, and follows up with a Kaiga, and passes. My turn has me playing a Path of Ancestry which comes in tapped, and I cast Puppeteer Clique to get an Endracer Forerunners from Mika. For combat, I then swing the Nighthawk Scavenger and Machias at Mika, and the Mirror Entity, Forerunners, and Burakos at Maximus. Burakos triggers on attack, dealing 4 to Maximus and making me 4 treasure tokens. Both of them declare no blocks and take the full hit. And I jump up to 52 life thanks to the Nighthawk Scavenger. After that, I pass, and the Endracer Forerunners get exiled from the clique. Maximus draws and plays a Black Market. Going to combat, he swings a Chupacabra and Horror token at me, and Layla at Mika. This has him exiling an island off the top from the attack trigger, and Kevin and Maximus both draw a card from the curse trigger. Mika blocks the beast token, and I take 3 and mill 3, but hit no creatures. Maximus then plays an island and casts Soul Ring into a Phyrexian Revoker. As it enters, he names Mirror Entity. At this point, Mika sacrifices Sakura Tribe Elder, going to find a mountain, and gains 3, and Maximus passes the turn, getting a Talisman of Hierarchy off his captain to put to the field. Mika draws and plays the Bloodbraid Elf off Durnan, hitting me for 4 with the Passionate Archaeologist trigger. This cascades into a Mana Gorger Hydra, dealing another 3 to me. After that, Mika casts a Sweet Gum Recluse off the Escape to the Wilds, dealing another 6 to me, and cascades into Light Up the Stage, dealing 3 to Kevin this time. Mika then resolves his bounty triggers, getting 3 beast tokens and putting 3+1/+1 counters onto the Bloodbraid Elf. Moving to combat, Mika swings the 9/8 Bloodbraid Elf at me, and Durnan at Maximus. Maximus activates Zellix before blocks to mill Mika for 3 and hits a creature, making a Horror token. He double blocks Durnan with the Captain and Revoker, while I chump with a Mirror Entity. The Captain dies, but does come back from Undying thanks to the Haunted One trigger, and after that, Mika passes. Kevin draws and plays Baeloth. He then casts a Curse of Opulence on me, and passes, while I pump Machias once more on his end step. I draw and play a Plains. I then cast Nalia Darnese, and cast a Sabine's Reclamation, bringing back Mirror Entity. Going to combat, I put a +1/+1 counter onto each of my creatures and give them Death Touch thanks to Nalia, and then swing the Puppeteer Clique and Nighthawk at Mika, and Burakos at Maximus. Maximus takes 4 off the trigger, but chumps with the Horror, while Mika chumps the Nighthawk with the Sweet Gum Recluse, and takes the rest. I then gain 7 life, and after combat, play Selfless Spirit and pass turn. Maximus draws, and makes 9 black mana from Black Market. He casts a Mind Crank, and plays Nephalia Drownyard, and then casts the Reflections of Littjara, naming Horror. He finishes off with the floating black mana by casting a Night Howler, and makes a copy of it with Reflections, bestowing it onto the Captain and a copy of the Horror, and swings the bestowed Horror at me and the Phyrexian Revoker at Mika, drawing a card from the Curse of Verbosity. Neither of us block, and I take 10 but have to mill 20, while Mika takes 2 and has to mill 4. Maximus gets 2 Horrors off the mills, and on his end step, brings back a Hornet Queen from the Captain trigger before passing. Mika draws, and casts Return of the Wildspeaker off Light of the Stage, drawing 13 cards, and dealing 5 to Kevin with the Archaeologist trigger. Kevin also has to mill that much damage worth of cards, and Maximus' commander sees a creature going in, making him a Horror token. Mika then plays a Forest and gains 3, passing to Kevin. Kevin draws, and plays a Command Tower. He then overloads a Spectacular Showdown, and everything gets a Double Strike counter and gets goaded. And Kevin follows up with a Dissipation Field. Moving to combat, he swings Kaiga at Maximus, but unfortunately forgets to swing Baeloth. Moving to blocks, Maximus trades with a Death Touch Insect from the Hornet Queen. Kaiga's trigger then steals the Mana Gorger Hydra, and Baeloth makes 2 treasure tokens from the trigger. After that, Kevin passes, and I activate Mikaeus to put a +1/+1 counter onto each of my creatures. I draw, and play an 8.5 Tails, and then tap Mikaeus to pump the team again. In response, Maximus mills me for 3 but hits no creatures, and I then give the Nighthawk Scavenger protection from Might with Tails and make his Hornet Queen and her tokens all white. Moving to combat, all my creatures then get another counter from Nelia, and I swing Burakos, the Selfless Spirit, Nalia, and Mirror Entity at Mika, and the Nighthawk Scavenger and Puppeteer Clique at Maximus. Mika responds to the curse trigger of drawing a card by flashing out a green slime to counter it and destroy it. And once that's resolved, Kevin goes to Chaos Warp my Nighthawk Scavenger, which I respond to by making the warp white so it's countered. Maximus also mills me for 3 with Zellix and makes a Horror token, but can't stop my onslaught and dies. Mika chumps Burakos with a green slime and trades some beasts with the Mirror Entity and Nalia, but still takes 10. After that, I pass, and Mika cracks a Myriad Landscape, going to find 2 more lands and gaining 6 life. Mika draws and plays a Tap Spine Rock Knoll, gaining 3 life and hiding away a card. He then plays Ignite the Future and puts 3 +1/+1 counters onto a beast token. He then casts Xenagos the Reveler, putting 3 more counters onto the Bloodbraid Elf. He follows up with an Aurora Phoenix and cascades into Faldorn, which has him making 2 more beast tokens. He then casts the Retrieve Prey half of a Thankali Hunter, putting 3 more counters onto a beast token, and making a wolf token off of Faldorn. Moving to combat, he swings 2 6/6 beasts and a Bloodbraid Elf at me, and I block the Bloodbraid Elf with 8.5 Tails, and give Tails Pro White, while simultaneously making the Elf white to save it. I still take 24 though, and Mika passes. Kevin draws and plays an island. He plays an Artificer class and levels it up, and then activates Desolate Lighthouse to loot. He can't find what he's looking for though, and going to combat, he swings the Mana Gorger Hydra and Baeloth at me, and I promptly get taken out. After that, Kevin plays an Angler Turtle and passes. Mika draws and goes straight to combat, paying the propaganda tax to swing everything at Kevin. This is more than enough damage thanks to the double strike counters, and Mika takes the game. Game review time. So that was a lot of fun, being able to pair up the commanders with their backgrounds and see how they play out. They mesh incredibly well with what the decks wanted you to begin with which is a nice change of pace when compared to some of the earlier commander sets where you'd often get 3 different commanders each wanting different things and a kind of watered down deck. These felt very focused, very direct, and exactly what they wanted to do. I think the Exit from Exile one seems to play the strongest out of the box, with Mika actually winning both games that we played with the Precons, regardless of which commander was ahead. I think the Exit from Exile deck probably plays the best out of the box, as there's a lot of good ramp and card draw and just all around powerful effects. Durnan, while not necessarily the best effect with having to attack, does have the very strong Passionate Archaeologist, which is able to blast people in the face. And Faldor just rewards you for doing exactly what the deck wants to do with wolf tokens, and if you're not able to, you can activate her to get the ball rolling. For party time, while I like Nalia, I think Burakos was significantly better, and with that folk hero being able to draw even though I didn't cast it, it's just significant value in the command zone. For the Draconic Descent, I actually think that Furkrag is the better of the two, because Baeloth actually can only goad things that have power less than he does, so it takes a lot of effort to build up a 6-drop to have a significant amount of power to affect the board state. Clancrafter is very good though, I just don't think as good as Furkrag, which just goads on attack. I actually think of all 4 of the decks, Mind Flayers probably have the 2 strongest commanders, and they can pretty much be used as successfully as the other. I like that the captain steals artifacts or creatures at the end of turn, but Zellix is very powerful, and Haunted One giving Undying, not to mention pumping things, is incredible as long as your commander is tapped, which is very easy to do. I think from a building standpoint, Zellix is probably the stronger of the commanders since it does so well with something like Altar of the Brood, but I wouldn't be surprised to see captains popping up on tables near you very soon. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.